Okay, today we're going to dissect the earthworm, and each desk partnership, okay, will get a bag like this, and in this bag you have a number of different organisms. And what we're going to do is we're going to take out the earthworm today. We're going to be looking at the annelid, and so you're going to have a paper clip that you're going to need to remove. You want to unroll it and reach down in here. Notice that I do have some gloves on, so you can grab some of the latex gloves or rubber gloves we have in the back. You want to go ahead and get out your earthworm. Place your earthworm on your dissection tray, and then it's really important that you roll that back up. You got to roll it up really tight because we don't want it to dry out. There's preservative that's in there. It's called Nasco guard. Okay. All right. So we're going to put that off to the side. What you'll do in class is that you'll roll it up, put a paper clip on it, and put it back in your periods box. Okay? All right. You're also going to need a dissection tray. You'll have the dissection tray on your desk. And in the dissection tray, so you can see just a little better, what we have is a pair of scissors, which we won't need to use, okay, for this particular dissection. So I'm going to set that off to the side there. We'll have a scalpel. This is very, very, very sharp, okay? It's stainless steel, razor sharp. So you want to be extremely careful with it. And when you're using the scalpel, you never cut towards yourself. You always cut down and away. You can hold it just like this, like a pencil. Okay? And so that when I put this away in the dissection tray, I'm going to put it against the side so my finger can't get in there and I can't cut myself. Also, you want to be very careful with the rubber. We've had this rubber here in the bottom of this dissection tray for 17 years. We want to keep it for a lot longer so we don't have to buy any more equipment. You'll have a pair of forceps, and you'll have a little teaser or probe, and of course your annelid. All right. You'll also have on your desk a little dissection guide. The dissection guides give you information on the earthworm, the structures, the parts. You also have access to this chart right here that we'll be taking a look at a little later. Okay? On the board, you also have a list. Why don't we go ahead and take a closer look at this real quick. You have it organized on the list of the external characteristics, and you also have the internal characteristics. And before we actually start opening the organism to look at the internal structures, we're going to learn what these parts are on the outside of the organism. Okay? So first of all, I'll kind of go over these terms with this diagram, and then I'll show you on the actual earthworm. Okay? So the first one, the anterior end is actually the front. Okay, that's the front end of an organism, of a bilaterally symmetrical organism. We'll get into that definition a little later. We've talked about it, but we'll review it. So here's the anterior end of the earthworm on this chart. Okay, here's the anterior end on this chart here with this earthworm. Okay, the next one is posterior end. Now the posterior end is the back end. So the front end is anterior, the back end is posterior. The anterior end is where the mouth is, the posterior end is where the anus is. So they take food in, it goes through the body, and exits out through the anus, so the posterior end. The next one is dorsal on our list. Okay, dorsal is the top side. Okay, that's the top. If you're scratching your cat's back or your dog's back, you're scratching the dorsal surface. So dorsal is top here on this earthworm. The next one is ventral. Ventral is the bottom side. This is where they have these little seta or bristles, and you can barely see little bristles maybe from that distance, but that's the bottom on the ventral side. Okay? Our next one is prostomium. Prostomium is the lip, the overhang, if you will, on the mouth. Okay? So the prostomium is just dorsal to the mouth, and the mouth would be just ventral to the prostomium. Okay? All right. The next one is mouth. We can see that. That's that little part right there. And seta, we went over that. It's the bristles. In fact, when you pick up the earthworm and you rub your fingers across it, you can feel kind of it's kind of sandpaper-like. And those are the little bristles. Then the clitellum is this piece right here. And the clitellum is that big band. And that big band, the clitellum, is used in reproduction. And I've created a PowerPoint that will go over all the different organs and the structures, their functions, that kind of stuff. So you can see that as well as this presentation to help you with your dissection. Seminal receptacles and the anus. The anus is here. We've already pointed that out. And the seminal receptacles I would like to show you on the actual specimen. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and move on to the actual specimen. Okay, this might be a good time for you to have a pencil and paper out and write down these key terms that we're going to be using on the external anatomy of the earthworm. So we're going to leave this up for a second and let you write these down. You can look in your book, or you're welcome to come pick up one of the dissection guides and look at that and study those prior to the dissection. Okay, so here's our earthworm. And as we look at the dissection tray, remember that we have the scalpel and it's down and away, so the blade is next to the pan. Let's go over the external anatomy of the earthworm. The first thing is, so I don't have to look back there, I'm going to have this next to me. This has the same, the anatomical features. So here's the earthworm. Let's have you zoom in just a little bit here. Let's take a look at the anterior end. Now, the easiest anatomical structure to visualize, to see, is the clitellum. The clitellum is closest to the anterior end. That means it's closer to the mouth. If we can get a little closer, if it's possible, go ahead and see if we can get really close here. And I'll have some pictures on the PowerPoint that will help you with this. But right here is called the prostomium. That's that upper lip that we were talking about. See if you can get in there, Lynn. Okay, right there is the mouth. Okay, that's the mouth. My probe is going right there inside the mouth, and that's the prostomium. So this is the anterior end. Okay, if I go opposite of that, all the way to the back end, this hole would be the anus. This is where the waste is eliminated. Okay, and I can feel as I rub my hands across here, I can feel those. Let's look at the ventral side of the earthworm. The ventral side is the surface that is on the bottom, remember, but it is also lighter in coloration. That's the ventral side. If we turn it over on this side, it's dorsal. The dorsal blood vessel makes it have a little more pigmentation to it. It's darker in color. And so that's important because we're going to cut on the dorsal surface. That's what we're going to be cutting. So we want to make sure that we know the dorsal side as opposed to the ventral side of the earthworm, or commonly called an annelid because it is a segmented worm. All right, let's look on our list and see if we have any more to go over. We got the anterior, the posterior, the dorsal, the ventral, the prostomium, mouth, seta, seminal receptacles. Let's take a look at that. Seminal receptacle is where the earthworm receives the sperm from the opposite worm. When they come out of their hole at night, this end, where the anus is stuck in the hole, and the other earthworm comes out like this, and they attach to one another. And where they attach, a little mucus film forms there, and they exchange sperm. They keep their eggs, and they exchange the sperm. And the sperm is accepted into seminal receptacles. And let's see if we can get a shot of that. Here's the seminal receptacles. Right here. There's one seminal receptacle on each side. There's one there, and there's one right here. We can get another shot of the seminal receptacles in just a minute. Okay? It looks like we have all of the external anatomy covered. We'll go over this again in class, but this gives you a good start getting ready for our dissection. Now we know what the external parts are and their functions. We're going to be taking a look at the inside of the earthworm and look at the internal parts. We have our pins that we're going to need. We have our safety glasses on, our gloves, so we're ready to go. So let's come on down here. First step, remember, is we need to know what the dorsal surface is, because that's where we're going to end up making our incision, and that's the darkest surface. the lighter colored area is the ventral surface. So I'm going to take my earthworm, I'm going to place it across my dissecting pan. I'm going to grab my forceps here. I'm going to grab my scalpel, and remember, I want to be very, very careful with that. I'm not going to cut towards myself. In fact, I'm not even going to pick up the organism with my hands. I'm going to use my forceps. These are cool little tools that we can use, and that way we don't have to touch the organism and risk our hands coming in contact with the blade. So I'm just going to grab the actual earthworm with the forceps. I'm going to move this out of the way here. And I'm going to gently, very, very gently go over the top of the earthworm. I'm going to move to give you just a little better view so that we can actually see the cutting process. Remember, our first incision is going to be from anterior, which is the front, moving back posteriorly. And I just want to barely cut through this. You guys are probably going to be a little better at this than I am. Just barely cut through this. Don't want to have a lot of pressure on it, because underneath there are internal organs that you're going to cut through if you're not careful. As I go across this, there is a little fluid that might come out, and that's just preservative. Okay? As you can see that I'm cutting right through the muscle, the wall of the muscle. The muscle itself, there's two types of muscles. There's the longitudinal and the circular muscles. We'll discuss those a little later. Zoom out just a little bit. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin down one side of the body wall with the pins. I've got some insect pins or dissecting pins that we're going to use, and I'm going to place these at an angle. Notice that I'm putting them at an angle, and the reason for that is so that we can have space to put our fingers in there when we actually need to do some more identification and pointing the different structures out, and also cutting. Okay, so now you can see that one of the sides is cut down. I want to kind of pull this back like so and cut some of the connective tissue that's holding it together. I'm going to spin this around. Hopefully we'll end up in the right spot. Okay, I'm going to pull this way so you can kind of see it a little bit. You can see the connective tissues right there. I'm going to kind of cut that just a little there. Okay, just going to cut that. I can't really see it very well, but we're going to give it a try. There we go. Okay. Then I'm going to pull this back even a little farther here. Cut that like so. And put my scalpel down in the way. I'm going to finish some pinning here to make sure I can open that up. There we go. I'm going to do the same here. Again, careful the angle. Make sure the angle is right. You're going to continue to do this all the way down. Grab my scalpel again. Just past the clitellum. I'm not going to go that far. Just past the clitellum. Scalpel down and away. So I'm going to pin right to there. You all have a steadier hand than I do. Mine's a little old and shaky. I'm going to turn it the other way. So I'm going to spin it around, like so. Grab my scalpel again. I'm going to pull this open. And I'm cutting a little bit of the connective tissue, as we mentioned earlier. Cut a little bit of that connective tissue. Don't want to go too deep, because if we do, there are vital organs that are there. Don't want to cut any of those. I can now see some of the internal structures quite well. I'm going to put that away. Go ahead and grab some more pins. Open that up, put it at an angle. Now in class, you are going to have an earthworm, and you and your partner are going to be dissecting that earthworm. I got a little bit of connective tissue still here, connected to that intestine. I want to cut that away just a little bit there. Pulling that gizzard. Okay, starting to look pretty good. Put my scalpel back where it's supposed to be. Grab some more pins. I'm going to turn this around again. Open that up. I can see that there's a little more connective tissue that I'm going to need to get rid of here. So I'm going to cut that right there. Try to alleviate a little bit of that pressure. Oh, I can see the ganglia. Cerebral ganglia, which essentially is like a very simple brain. In fact, I need a few more pins, so let me grab a few more pins. Starting to look pretty good. Still got a little ways to go. And the interesting thing to me about annelids is you look from the outside and they look so simple, and then when you open them up inside, there's a lot more complexity to them. I'm going to cut a little more of this connective tissue here. Not bad. Okay, I can put my scalpel away. All right, let's take a look at a few of the parts. What I'm going to need to do is to zoom in here just a little bit. We're going to start at the anterior end, which is right here. So I'm going to need a little help from the camera to zoom in here, and we're going to point out the cerebral ganglia. The cerebral ganglia, remember, is part of the nervous system. And I'm going to push down on the pharynx. And actually right here, if you could see it, these little white, there's two little white dots right here. Okay, just anterior to my probe. Okay, I'm putting my probe kind of right next to one. Right there. Those two little dots. Can you see that? Zoom in just a little closer, can you? All right, that's the cerebral ganglia. Then just posterior to the cerebral ganglia is the pharynx. The pharynx is a muscular pump that will be used to actually suck in its food. Then between the pharynx and the crop is the esophagus. Now I'm going to put my probe underneath here, and that's the esophagus, that tube right there. Okay, my probe is right underneath the esophagus. And then if you can see these little arches, okay, there's little arches right here. These are called the aortic arches, and I've kind of ripped one of them as I was opening it, but this is an aortic arch. Here's some more aortic arches. There's 5 arches that go across here, and those are the earthworm's heart, or hearts, I should say. Then you have these structures right here. They're kind of white. Okay, these are the seminal vesicles, and these seminal vesicles, these white pieces, they actually make the sperm. The seminal receptacles are the smaller ones right here. You can see these little round structures. These are the seminal receptacles. You got seminal receptacles on this side and also on that side. Okay, so hey, let's review real quick. These two little dots right here, anterior to the pharynx, that's called the cerebral ganglia. Okay, they're right at the top right here, cerebral ganglia. Then you have the pharynx, which is the muscular organ that helps with getting the food into the organism. And then you have the aortic arches, or the hearts that go across here. There's 5 of those. And on the underside right here, you have the esophagus. Here is the seminal vesicles. And the smaller ones on the sides are the seminal receptacles, which connect on the outside to those openings that I showed you earlier. Okay, next. Excuse me. Next is the crop. When you put your probe on the crop, it's soft, okay, kind of soft and gushy. The crop then dumps into the gizzard. The gizzard is hard to the touch. It's muscular and is used to grind up the food. A lot of times little rocks get in there, and the rocks act as grit to help grind up that food. Just posterior to the gizzard is the intestines, and that runs all the way down along through here, the intestines. And the intestines will continue to run down the entire length of the body, all the way to the end, to the anus. All right, let's take a look then at the two vessels that are of importance to us. These are the larger vessels, vessels that we can see easily. The first one is the dorsal blood vessel. That's this right here. I'm putting my probe just underneath it. Right there, it's very fragile, so you'll need to be careful when you put your probe underneath there. That's the dorsal blood vessel. As you can see, it goes from the aortic arches, or the hearts, the 5 hearts, and runs along the top side, the dorsal surface, hence the dorsal vessel. Runs all the way down. Now, there is also a ventral vessel that's kind of small, and I'm going to see if we can get a look at that. I'm going to pull to the side very carefully, right here. I'm going to cut away some of that connective tissue. And I really need my glasses. Okay, let's try the other side. I'm going to go ahead and turn it. Get me in a position. Okay. Right there, let's try it. I'm going to pull this to the side. Cut away some of this connective tissue. And there's a little vessel right there that's brown. Put that away. I know it's hard to see. It's right here. See that little brown? I'm going to put my probe right underneath it. There we go. In fact, right next to this is the ventral nerve cord. And we'll move down just a little bit, see if we can see that ventral nerve cord. But that brown vessel right there is the ventral blood vessel. Both the ventral blood vessel and the dorsal blood vessel are connected to each other by other small vessels that you can see. All right, let me take a look down here, see if I can see. Ah, yes, there it is right there. So you can see the ventral blood vessel, and then see that white cord? Put my probe right underneath that white cord. That's the ventral nerve cord. Boy, you can't get any better than that, ladies and gentlemen. That is a good-looking ventral nerve cord if I've ever seen one. And as you get closer to it, if you're looking at it with a dissecting microscope, you'll see that there's little swollen regions that are ganglia as you move down. You might be able to see it a little bit. I can see it when I do this. Very cool. All right, let's move that back into position. All right, let's review here really quickly. We've got the vessel on top, which is the dorsal blood vessel, which runs from anterior to posterior. On the underside, we have the ventral blood vessel, that darkened vessel there. I got my probe right underneath it. And I also have, running from the ganglia here, moving from anterior to posterior, we have the ventral nerve cord. All right, let me take a look at the internal anatomy list here real quick, and I'm going to go down the list, and I'm going to point to everything one more time, okay? Here we go. Cerebral ganglia. Probe is right underneath it. Pharynx. Esophagus. The tube that goes between the pharynx and the crop. That tube. Crop. Soft and gushy. Gizzard. Intestine, the tube that runs the entire length of the body from anterior to posterior. Seminal vesicles, the big white creamy things here. Seminal receptacles, the smaller little ones that are lateral to it. A dorsal blood vessel, the vessel on top. Ventral blood vessel, the one on the bottom. The one that I think I just ripped. Oh, there it is. Ventral nerve cord, the white cord, and the hearts. There's 5 of them that go across the esophagus. All right, those are all the internal parts that you need to know. Let's go ahead and zoom back and move up so that they can see me for a minute. Let me talk to them. Really quickly, it's important that you know all of the anatomy that's on the board. That's inside here, the dissection guide. What I'll have you do is I'll have you read through this very carefully, take notes after you're finished with the dissection. Oh, you'll also be quizzed on all the parts, you and your partner. You can use the board to help you remember what the parts are. Either your student teacher or myself will come around and we'll quiz you, or a lab aide, and we'll point to the different parts, and you'll need to identify them as a partnership. Later that evening, you will go home and take an earthworm guide quiz. That guide quiz is worth 100 points. It's like any quiz or assignment. The kicker is that you can't retake a guide quiz. So it's important that you prepare ahead. You can use your notes on the guide quiz. You can take any notes you want to during this presentation or in class. You can take notes from the guide itself. We also have the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint has a lot of really important information that will be found on the guide quiz. So by looking at this video and taking a look at the PowerPoint will really help you prepare for that. So I hope this was helpful. It's a little awkward for me. I hope I did a good enough job for you. So go for it.